polluting the environment, or it is abusing workers and their rights and viciously underpaying them and not giving them the benefits that they deserve. We have an economy that can completely account for and provide for a living wage for everyone. We have a mobilization on the Green New Deal that will also provide for millions of jobs at living wages. We have a transition to our system that will completely change our system and our approach to energy, as well as our economic approach. And we can afford to give people the wages that they deserve. What we cannot afford is to have a country where people cannot afford to feed themselves, have a home, and are forced to live on the streets. We cannot afford that as a society or as humanity. Now, I want to mention co-ops because I didn't earlier in my speech. We're talking about a socialist system. We're talking about complete system change. We're talking about communities building cooperative businesses and enterprises in which people are working and earning wages as a part of enterprises that are also feeding into the economic development of communities. And so the answer to your question in a global sense is that the entire system is going to have to change to become a socialist system to accommodate that. In the context of capitalism, that answer, which is a bogus one even in that context, will always come up because that is the focus. Away from people having a living wage and a home and jobs and towards whether or not the 1% gets the dividends they feel they deserve.
I think Chris was next. So
sorry.
Chris and then Ann with the staff.
I'm a Teamster. I met Howie I knew Howie, but I met him at the Chicago Teamsters for a Democratic Union.
Okay.
But so my question is along the worker sense. I believe in cooperatives, but like collective bargaining agreements, do you believe that there should be something more like the same as collective bargaining agreements? We should be able to put forward cooperative bargaining agreements and maybe have a day where everyone signs a union card or has simply card checking. So it's a couple of questions.
Yes, no, I absolutely believe in the context of what we're discussing, the system change. I believe in strong unions and the ability of unions to represent workers' rights and the right of people to participate in unions. And we've seen that be eroded over the past number of years. And so I think that what you're describing, which is an opportunity for people to have more say and a better connected sense of representation, absolutely. I think within the context of people's choice to participate in unions, I think there's a place for that. And there needs to be more breathing room for the unions to develop that sense of representation and that strong voice for workers' rights. We're seeing that being systematically eroded. And that's something that we as Greens have to speak out against.
And how do you feel, you mentioned raising the minimum wage. How do you feel about actually creating a maximum wage? Because we continue to talk about, a minimum wage. Oh, we couldn't raise a minimum wage. Can't do that. But what do you think about capping and putting a maximum wage or also designing a wage ratio to where no one at the top makes more than, say, 10-to-1 ratio, more than the bottom paid workers, so that if they want to make more, they can make more, but they got to start paying the other people more, so all boats rise together.
I'm glad that you raised that because that falls under a broader category of suggestions, and I'm not opposed to that idea. It's just that here's the focus. The system itself has to change so that you don't produce people who are abusing people to make massive amounts of money, more so than anyone else can hold. And so I put that in a larger category of suggestions such as we need to tax more, the rich more. Okay, it's not something I feel strongly in opposition to. The only problem is that it won't solve the problem. You can tax the rich more all you want, but if you still have a system that abuses everyone and allows people to make billions and billions off of people suffering, you're still going to have that suffering. So we do need that fundamental system change. Whether or not we have that, whether or not we have universal basic income, you're not going to get that stronger sense of economic equality until you have that system change.
Anna?
I think it's Natalie.
Oh, Natalie? I thought you said, okay, Natalie and then
Amy.
Right.
Go ahead, Amy.
Oh, all right. After 20 years of trying to live, vote green since Ralph Nader's run, I kind of feel like what Greens and non-voters have in common is that we're invisible until Democrats need to punch left. And I know I'm not the only one who feels like non-voters, either people that have been forced off the voter rolls or people that simply don't turn out to vote, are like a huge resource that we're failing to tap. Do you feel like there's anything you can do about that, or that you have done about that already in the course of your campaign?
This is what our campaign is focused on. Our campaign is focused on talking about the issues that matter to everyday Americans and Americans from various walks of life and backgrounds. People who would not otherwise have felt that they had a place or a home with the Green Party. I had a colleague on the Youngstown Board of Education, who myself is African American, and she said to me rather pointedly, I went to one meeting and I felt like, and these are her words, I felt like the fly in the buttermilk. She just didn't feel like there were enough people around that looked like her, but also there weren't enough people around that understood where she came from. And that's sad because our platform does have a great understanding of the issues that affect the African American community, many of the marginalized communities in this country. If we are running in 2020 as a campaign that is focused on, let's say, the Green New Deal, not only just exclusively, but for the most part, if that's the face we're putting forward, there's nothing wrong with the Green New Deal, it's awesome. But that doesn't dispel that problem at all. And it doesn't bring in new people for whom our platform speaks to, but they just don't know it. So 2020 needs to be a game changer for us in branding ourselves. And when I say branding, I don't mean in a superficial marketing sense. I mean in terms of presenting the goods that we have, which are great, but people don't know about. And so that's why we are presenting that image of justice for the planet and justice for all its people. We're comprehensive as a party on those issues. We just got to be better about representing it.
Last question now. Yes, quick.
I just wanted to ask, what were some of the specific goals of your campaign, and if you had anything specific that you wanted to accomplish with your campaign?
Well, what we just mentioned, that's one of them. Changing minds about the Greens as an option. Making people aware of just exactly what we represent and how we represent those issues that other parties aren't. So there's that. As a part of that, we have a campaign called See Greens Lead. So we want to see local Greens elected, and one of those things, we want that to be one of those things that comes out of this election, so that past 2020, we're setting that framework for people to recognize what the Green Party has to offer. And so, very specifically and pointedly, we just say we want to have more local Green elected office holders. We have been actively endorsing candidates for office as a campaign. And that's important because if we have any amount of media attention and we share that with those campaigns, it can help local Greens get elected. And when people see Greens in office, they see what we represent in motion. I'm the only candidate who has held elected office. That matters. My community knows what it means to be Green because they've seen me. So that is very much a part of our specific goals. Yes, we have some goals in ballot access. We all have those goals. Every campaign has those goals. So we're all striking to ensure that the party can get on as many ballots as possible all across this country. But when we do get on the ballot, what do we represent to people? We have to be careful and mindful of that, and our campaign has to have a very pointed, specific approach to that. So yeah, specifically, you want to be on the ballot in as many states as possible, all across the country, all 50 states if possible. But we're also focused on community building and infrastructure for people to recognize what our party represents so that when they see us on the ballot, they know to vote for us.
Dan and then myself.
You had what I consider some very impressive comments on peace and non-interventionism. I was wondering what you might have to say specifically on the themes of international law, bringing the United States into compliance with the UN Charter and with the national security state that exists in this country.
Yes, the framework in this country for surveillance and spying on citizens, abusing their rights, and what we've seen happen with Snowden, with Chelsea, with Assange, which is really, I mean, they tortured that man. I mean, it's been said by multiple people, and legal minds, that what happened to him was torture. And it goes on, a judicial form of extrajudicial torture happening to him. So we are seeing human rights erosions on an unprecedented scale in the modern era, and that apparatus that's spying on Americans all across this country, that's a part of that. And administrations from both of those two parties have done this. That has to be pointed out. So that has to come to an end. And the lesson out of that Assange case, for example, has to be that we need to have greater protections for whistleblowers as a country, greater protections for freedom of the press, because that comes under that ambit. That's what that is. And we also have to deal with the fact that we have been living in many ways under a surveillance state. We have been. We have been living under a surveillance state. So that is a part of building peace. That's a part of building peace, and also having a smarter perspective in dealing with the rest of the world. Some alleged conspiracies were brought up in the earlier discussion. Without going into too much detail about this, I would class that amongst the number of unfortunate psyops that are designed to distract attention away from what is really happening, including the interventionist activity in this country abroad. Many people in power in this country really deserve to be tried for war crimes. There's Benjamin Netanyahu, who the U.S. has been complicit with, also deserves to be tried for war crimes. And a Green administration would ensure that those who are responsible for such crimes are held accountable, whether they are in this country or abroad.
Thank you.
So my question, and it comes up with this idea about minimum wage and job killers.
Yeah.
The job killer is automation. And I've seen this firsthand. And so when we talk about a minimum wage, we need to address this situation where a lot of people aren't going to have jobs in the near future. So we need to address that as well, because I think we need, basically, we were talking earlier about the $750 rebate. I think we all need to have access. We have tons of people out there on the streets right now that aren't capable of working. And they're living on basically collecting bottles, if that. And I think we kind of need to address that situation as well when we talk about minimum wage. What's the real job killer?
Yeah, and I have to mention that the Green New Deal, there are colleagues in this race that would agree with me on this. It's not a controversial idea. Included in this is full employment. And that's a part of this mobilization. And so we are talking about the creation of jobs that's not only going to help make our planet a greener and a cleaner place, but also going to provide opportunities, economic opportunities. And automation is an issue. Also the fact that we do have people in this country who are not able to work for some period of their lives, or perhaps unfortunately for the rest of their lives. That's an issue about the social safety net that we have. And I would say that we don't have much of it right now. So many people are falling through the cracks. And that's why we see so much poverty and homelessness. So we need a stronger and more robust social safety net for people. And we need to have a perspective as a country. That's why we need system change, a perspective that says that it isn't might that makes right, it isn't money that makes right. It's the ability of a society to be able to take care of all of its members and to have full and equal participation for all of its members, whatever they can offer at whatever level they can offer. And we don't have that right now. We don't have that system where we can share alike and participate alike. And that's why we need that fundamental system change. That's why we're talking about a socialist system rather than a capitalist one, because a capitalist system looks at a person who cannot work, who cannot produce, and says, you are of no use to us. And so we don't have to see to your health or your welfare. You are a drain. And we see the effect of that on the streets of LA, Oakland, and Portland.
This is John. I'm having a hard time hearing. I think the problem mainly is that when the mic is across the room from the speaker, it doesn't come through very clearly. So maybe move the mic closer to the speaker, please.
Thank you.
Okay, last, something
I
short?
think you're doing Transformers.
Short? Yeah. Last question.
I wanted to deliver a sermon.
I think so.
No sermons.
I try to do that, but anyway, I'm interested in this topic of full employment versus meeting needs of people. And I think, everyone, including Greens, in this economy, in this culture, they view job creation, full employment as a good thing. And I think, a big problem with our society, the reason that we are destroying our ecological system and support this is work. Work basically, as it's defined now, is a matter of taking valuable natural resources and turning it into landfill. And so I think there's way too much work that goes on in this country. It's this ecological holocaust is not caused because we're not doing the right things. It's because we're doing too much stuff, period. So I don't, it's a difficult topic to address, and maybe there's, more than 50% of people in this room wouldn't agree with me, but I'd say we've got to get away from this idea of job creation as a good thing. Job creation just means more ecological devastation to me. So anyway, I just wanted to deliver that lecture, and if you can comment on this in terms of full employment, and to me, it's not a matter of full employment; it's a matter of people having their needs fully met.
It doesn't have full employment, for one thing, doesn't have to mean full in the connotation sense. Like every single person has a job and everyone must work. In an economic sense, it means employment within a certain range. So just to clarify that, economically speaking. And no, not everyone has to have a job. We're going to have people who are still working with the educational system. We're going to have some people who are not able to work at any given moment. And then when we do talk about those who are employed, particularly on the Green New Deal, we're talking about people employed in green industries. We're talking about people as a part of this transition towards renewable energy who are engaged in jobs that are helping make the planet cleaner and greener. So we don't have to have the kind of jobs we are seeing today. I think it's very easy to see, but the industry that we see around us, which is still belching pollutants into the environment, with the effects of agribusiness all around us, it's easy to look at industry as we see it now and harken back to an almost Dickensian sense of workhouses and everyone just, everybody find a job somewhere, anywhere, no matter how horrible and awful it is and how much it belches into the environment. And I think if we're really talking about fundamental system change, then our sense of what a job means will have to change, not just in an economic sense, but also in terms of what you do, how you do it, the expectations, management. All of that will fundamentally have to change. And so adding on to the idea that full employment in economic sense doesn't mean every single person, man, woman, and child being employed, I would add on to that, under this system change, it also doesn't mean jobs looking the way that they look today. They're going to have to be fundamentally more productive, and I don't mean in a capitalist sense, productive in a sense that builds communities and lives and is fulfilling and is a part of the health, welfare, and happiness of human beings. That's going to be the goal.
Thanks, Dario. So, really? So, do you have something to share as far as people who want to support you and website,
Absolutely.
Or do you want to?
Absolutely. I encourage you to go to DarioHunter.com, all one word, DarioHunter.com, and you can learn more about the campaign, our platform. You can connect with us. You can sign up to the list, volunteer. You can also donate. I wish the campaigns didn't have to raise money and we had an equal playing field, but as it is, that's not currently the case, so your donations of any amount would be appreciated. We've got some buttons and some stickers over there. We've got a sign-up sheet over there, and I can also take donations here today at this event if you're so inclined, or you could do that online. So.